Welcome to the CatholicPsych Show. We'll be talking about Donald Trump versus the Board of Education, rock music and Satanism, menthol-flavored e-cigarettes, maybe the heat wave. Dr. Greg Bottaro is excavating a pyramid in Egypt as we speak, so he's not available. Instead, we have the great Ryan Nash from Catholic Psych, one of our mentors. How are we doing today, Ryan?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm great. How was your weekend? What'd you do?
Really busy weekend for me. Took the day off of work actually on Friday and went into New York City with my 10-year-old and a good friend of mine who happens to be a priest. One of the things we did was actually celebrate Mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral, which was really cool to see him up there. And first time my son had been to New York City. And it's the first time I've been to actually do sightseeing stuff since I was in elementary school. So that was Friday. It was a hot day.
You live pretty close to Boston, though. Not as crazy for you, right?
Oh gosh, no. Yeah, no. It was. We drove to a train in Connecticut, and then took the train in. It was relatively simple.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of stimulus when you go to New York City for the first time, isn't there? Your head kind of explodes a little bit.
Yeah, man, there's so much to do there. But that's one of the coolest things about it is that we were there. It was just a long day trip. Like we were there for 13 hours. And, you barely scratch the surface of all the things you could actually do in the city.
Oh, yeah. Can't do anything. What about we're going to maybe talk about the heat wave later. You're walking around in 100-degree weather with your 10-year-old and a priest in a collar?
He wasn't in the collar. He wasn't in the collar. And yeah, no, there was a few piggyback rides for my 10-year-old for sure. Yeah, no. So honestly, I thought it was going to be worse, but it seemed like the heat was the worst when you're in the sun, and as it so happens, when you're in New York City,
generally that's true. Yes.
Sun. Yeah, you're protected by the skyscrapers pretty much the whole time. So, Empire State Building was another feeling. Goodness gracious, you were closer to the sun.
Well, it's generally one of the criticisms against New York City is that it's this world that's concrete jungle that's been built and you're not in touch with nature at all. For once, it actually works to your benefit because you can't get the direct sunlight.
Yeah, it was great.
Nice. So I had
go on.
I had a kid's birthday party this weekend. So I'm sure you've been to those before. Have you?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. On Sunday, we were celebrating my 10-year-old birthday too. So we had a bouncy house in our backyard. It was a whole thing.
I have a lot to say about this as a topic, actually. Okay. So we went to it was like a small bowling establishment, which was great in theory. It was only like 8 lanes in the whole place. It was really small. And I think it's built for kids, essentially. It was very contained. It's closed on Sundays. So the only people in the whole bowling alley was the party, the members of the party. I mean, it's great. They had the little side bumpers come up, and then they had I'd never seen these before. You know, these metal rolling things that it's like a metal contraption you put right up to the lane, and then you put the ball on top, and the kid just pushes it. So they don't. Yeah, I've never seen that before. So that was pretty cool. But thank goodness it was contained and no one else was there because, we talk about family life, and this might be a good segue into our first section to hear about rock music and Satanism, believe it or not, because you talk about family life. We talk about parents that don't prioritize life with their children. They may prioritize work over life with their children. This was not that. The thing that was upsetting to me about this party was that the parents there were generally prioritizing socializing over their kids. Have you ever been a part of these social groups where it's like it's 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning? Okay. Mm-hmm. Everybody's drinking. All the parents are drinking alcohol.
Okay.
Now, look, I'm not going to tell you that I've never drank alcohol at 11 o'clock on maybe not on a Sunday morning, but maybe at a brunch or something. Like maybe a mimosa or a Bloody Mary or something like that. But sure. Generally speaking, like I don't drink at 11 o'clock in the morning. If it is a special event, if I'm at the beach, which I may be next week, and I'm, and I'm overlooking the ocean, it's a vacation. Maybe if I'm tailgating once in a great blue moon, I have a drink early in the morning, but that's not what was going on here. You could tell that these people like drink at kids' birthday parties. It's like a part of their life.
Sure.
And the thing that was upsetting to me, it was like, it's like they've never grown up. It's like all they want to do is like socialize and talk with each other and drink. And there just happens to be kids running around in the background.
Right.
It's like if I
like
wasn't there making
that
sure,
kind of comes and buzzes and annoys you for a second, and like maybe you address it, but then you're
right.
like, okay, go away. Yeah.
Right. Oh, are you bleeding? You're not bleeding? Okay. Move along, kid, run along.
Yeah.
If I wasn't there to actually make sure people, like the kids would go, like no one would ever go. Like kids couldn't even read. They didn't even know whose turn it was. It was like absolute like bedlam, chaos, pandemonium.
Yeah.
And like, it's just, it's upsetting to me. And I could see how now not every, okay, this is just one kind of subculture of parents out there. It's not typically my subculture. When you go to a kid's birthday party, you see all other kinds of parents, right? When your kids become school age, you see what's out there in the world. But before that, like this is my oldest. So like you're kind of in your own mini family subculture until you start engaging with other parents.
Yeah.
And it was like, I could see how maybe 5, 6, 7 years from now, if the dynamic is the same, these are the same parents that are out there with one another, kind of partying. Like, I mean, you could tell that it's like hair of the dog. Like they're drinking now because they drank last night. They all felt terrible. They were all hungover when they first came in. Nobody wanted to be there. They were kind of complaining. Then they start drinking and they're having fun and socializing. It's like a party culture. But I'm just thinking like 5, 6, 7 years from now, those are the kids of those parents that are getting into a lot of trouble because their parents aren't engaged. They're not paying attention to the kids. And they're witnessing the party behavior of their parents. Yeah. It's like you could just see the seeds of problematic adolescent behavior right at a birthday party. Have you had any experiences like this?
Honestly, no, not on the parental level. Haven't seen a whole lot of that, but I totally get that feeling. And it makes me think about, you had mentioned how, like these parents who are still like drinking pretty heavily. It's like they never grew up. I'm just thinking.
I don't think they went to mass. I don't think they went to mass. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, of course not. Yeah. But I'm thinking about like how, when I was in college, there was definitely a decent amount of drinking, and
sure,
partying and all of that. And it wasn't until, just a series of events and me maturing and me really coming to a different relationship with alcohol that I started realizing like I'm doing so much of this drinking because I'm anxious of the socializing. And so like I would drink to make myself feel more comfortable with the people that I was with. And to think about like people who have never actually gotten out of that cycle,
right?
They've actually really never learned how to be with people in a situation where they don't even feel comfortable with themselves. And so it's like, maybe the kids are being ignored because their parents are so preoccupied with like socializing and drinking and all of that. But maybe the kids are anxious too because mom and dad actually don't know who they are. And they're still trying to figure themselves out. So how is a kid supposed to do that if it's not even modeled that way?
Totally. I mean, and you can see that the kids weren't there wasn't the most secure attachment. Let's put it that way. Running around, these kids were kind of like scattered, and you can just pick up on what we do for a living. It's our job to be clinicians.
Any parent who's actually showing them attention is good enough.
Right. Exactly. Right. And so I'm like observing these poor kids, and it's like, I talked to a friend once who asked me before they had kids. They said, "Is having kids hard? Is having kids hard?" Oh my gosh, Dr. Greg Vitaro is actually walking into my office right now. This is crazy.
Your office is not situated for guest appearances.
I just told everyone you were excavating a pyramid in Egypt.
How is that?
I don't know. It was a quick flight back to Connecticut.
Right. Or you're in Egypt.
Portals the aliens built.
Okay.
And I flew up from within them. And I ended up in your room. I don't even know how I'm in your office right now.
I'm a little reluctant. I'm a little reluctant to turn my camera because it's like my bed.
I can pop in here. Hold on. Hey, everybody.
Dr. Greg is here.
Dr. Greg, what's going on?
And this is fun. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, you're on it. I can't hear you. You guys.
Oh, no, he says hello. Yeah, I got my headphones on. He says hello, Dr. Greg.
I thought I was going to be able to pop on here for a minute, but this is like
there's no way.
Spaceship Central.
Right no.
In a cockpit.
I got the whole command center. There's no room.
This is an awesome setup. I've never actually even seen this.
Yeah, this is where we do
this. I am on my way to where did you say?
Egypt. I said you could go.
Pyramids.
Yeah.
Or Boston. It's similar.
Well, Boston on Logan Airport on the way.
Got it.
To Egypt. Yes.
All right. Well, Good seeing everybody live. Good seeing you, Ryan.
What a cameo.
God bless you guys.
That's great.
So, yeah. I didn't know who was coming in. I thought it was my kid walking in. I didn't know what was happening. Okay. So what was I saying about, I was saying, having kids.
Yeah, hard. Yeah.
So yeah, someone asked me if it's difficult to have kids. And I said, well, it's difficult if you're trying to add a child to your life.
Yeah.
Like to have the existing life that you had before, like it's really, really challenging.
Yep.
You have to say goodbye to your old life. If you say goodbye to your old life, it's easy.
Yeah.
And this is like with each kid. Like if you have this spirit of conversion at Catholic Psych, we always talk about, a spirit of conversion, of working on ourselves, never being satisfied with where we are. Then life becomes adventurous and interesting because you're exploring your interior life and you're moving on from where you were emotionally, psychologically. And it's interesting, right? And especially for a parent, because there's so many stressors and challenges. Like if you don't change, it's like standing in the ocean. The waves are going to knock you over, right?
Oh, for sure.
Or there's like all this pathology. And this is kind of an example of that. These are people that added a child to their life. Now, I don't want to be completely black and white. I mean, I'm sure there are parents that were there that are great parents. But just picking up on the culture, the spirit in the air was, it was upsetting. It was kind of upsetting. I felt bad for the kids.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I mean, if I could add to it as well, yes, it's not just adding kids to like your life and making it more complicated. It's like not seeing kids as your path towards fulfillment. Like if you just see kids as a burden, then yeah, you're going to have to be working uphill to try to take care of yourself and all of that. Whereas if you can see parenting as like your next step to living a full life, then it becomes a lot more easy because it's like, this is what I'm going to lean into. Like, I'm not going to try to do anything else.
Yes. And it's hard to say goodbye to things from your past. It is. I mean, and even at the point of marriage.
Yeah, to not be black and white, you shouldn't just completely cut off from everything that you used to do. Like you can still try to stay in touch and keep up with old hobbies or whatever it is, but it's just going to have to look different.
Right. And it's a death to self. It's a choice. And the idea is if you embrace that choice, then you actually have more peace and more freedom, right? Versus license, right? They talk about freedom as understood as license,
right?
It's not, freedom is not anything like doing whatever you want to do, but it's freedom is really the choice to do what is good for you. And then if you choose to do what is good for you, then like you get more peace, you get more freedom, you get more joy. And like, I probably have more joy. I don't know about that. It was kind of, well, actually I did have a good time. Like I probably would have more joy going to a kid's bowling birthday party than I would sitting down and I don't know, was some stupid stuff I used to do. Like just spending all day watching football, all Saturday watching football before I met my wife or something.
It becomes less and less clear, the more close you are to a healthy baseline. But I remember my first job out of undergrad was working with addictions. Yeah. And that was always that phrase of JP2 was always going through my head, which was true freedom is not doing what you want. It's doing as you ought. And like when you look at someone who's addicted to drugs, it is so clear that doing what you want is not what's leaving you feeling free and happy and fulfilled. It's leaving you feeling trapped and enslaved and burning all your bridges. Doing as you ought is what actually builds up community and makes you feel proud of yourself and all of that.
Yeah. And hopefully those things come together, right? It's not as if desire is bad. We do want to do what we want, but if what we want, which is disordered or disproportionate, right? If it's intemperate, if it's coming at the expense of other things and other people and responsibilities, that's when it's a problem. But doing what we ought to do, if we want to do what we ought to do, then it's like dynamite. It all comes together.
Sure, for sure.
Cool. I mean, I kind of like, not that we were going to talk about this first, but this does kind of dovetail. You're talking about addiction and stuff. It does kind of dovetail into one of the things that we were going to talk about today. So maybe we'll bump some of our stories and start with this one. Okay. I don't even know if we were going to get to it. Menthol flavored e-cigarettes. I smoked cigarettes for a long time, a full pack of cigarettes, like 7 years, roughly. I was saying this the other day. I think I had my first cigarette at 12, 13 years old. But like really through high school and college, I actually smoked. Yep. And so we have this article that just came out. Let me read you the quick headline and you can give your reaction here. So the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, also known as the FDA, authorized the sale of 4 menthol-flavored vapes from several brands, reasoning the products could help adult smokers. The FDA previously had ordered menthol-flavored vapes off the market. The agency noted it has placed marketing restrictions on the Enjoy vapes to prevent exposure to youth. FDA clears its first menthol e-cigarettes for adults. Parent groups and anti-tobacco advocates criticize the decision, which comes after years of pushing to keep menthol and other flavors that can appeal to teens off the market. Okay. There's a lot more here I can read, but it's not fun to just listen to me read. Do you have any thoughts about this? Menthol-flavored cigarettes. I mean, you smoked. You overcame the addiction. How long has it been for you?
Yeah, it's been in like 7 or 8 years since I've smoked a cigarette. I never got to a pack a day. I was at a half a pack at its worst. But yeah, no, I was smoking
You're a filthy casual.
More or less, yeah. It was actually, I was always just so broke that I couldn't sustain the addiction. And in Massachusetts, like the pack of cigarettes is expensive. By the time I quit, it was $11 a pack, which like at minimum wage, that was literally that was a pretty significant chunk of my paycheck. Yeah. I mean, what can I say? I mean, so you said the article was talking about how they just introduced it or they just banned it?
No, it's now authorized. So
yeah, okay.
So the co-founder of Parents Against Vaping E-Cigarettes says this decision can mean we'll never be able to close the Pandora's box of youth vaping epidemic. Because this is my feeling. I've seen a lot of campaigns against vaping, saying it's just as harmful as cigarettes. But this move is like designed. It's almost like when Camel had to remove Joe Camel from their cigarette advertising because it's designed to get
cowboy. Yeah.
It's designed to get kids to smoke. Right. Like that's part of the marketing. And this is saying the parents are saying this is similar. They're introducing menthol flavor because they know teens like menthol flavored cigarettes.
Right.
And the parents are very upset about this. So FDA has once again failed families by allowing a predatory industry to source its next generation of lifetime customers. I mean, that's the thing. You get the kids young, you start the addiction, then they never quit.
Right.
But the argument in favor of vapes is that it's like a step down. It's like a step on the way to. It's not, is it?
No, it's not. It's not. Dude. I get why you would think it is. Like I totally do. Like it's different. Like you're not actually burning a plant. Like it seems like it's a bit more casual. But there's so much more access to a vape than a cigarette. Like at least I know it's a little bit different in the South, but in the Northeast, you can't smoke a cigarette inside. Like you can't even get away with it. Whereas vaping, technically you're not allowed to vape inside, but like you can sneak a puff in here and there, or if you go to the bathroom, people are taking a puff. And so people who are trying to quit via vaping are actually just getting wildly more addicted to nicotine because they have access to it so much more frequently than a cigarette.
Do vapes smell?
I think they can.
Okay. Because cigarettes smell, right?
Right.
Cigarettes really smell. You don't smell yourself, but people smell you. And I think like the ability to like go in the bathroom and just like take a pull off your vape, or if you're at a show or something, or even in class, kids will like just like lean over and like pull on their vape. You couldn't do that with a cigarette. You like literally have to go out and smoke a cigarette, right?
And you're going to smoke the whole thing. And so that was another debate for why it's better, is that you only have to take one puff of a vape, to get like your fix off. Whereas with a cigarette, you're smoking the whole cigarette, you're getting that much more nicotine. And so that was another idea. Makes sense in theory, but in practice, you end up you're having way more nicotine throughout the day, so you're more addicted.
Yeah, Sunshine and 007, cool name, says, I agree. I have to say, as it would help with weaning off even cannabis. So it's something. He said it's very challenging with teens, so this isn't as bad. This isn't as bad, just my opinion. So, I mean, there are different ways people overcome addictions. It's not one size fits all, but I mean, I have found for me anecdotally that weaning off never helps with anything. Weaning, like I gotta like stop. I can't, because the dangerous thing about cigarettes, or at least when like back in my different cultural context when I was younger, right? Like things have changed, but it wove into the fabric and tapestry of your life. Like it becomes part of so many different things. It's not like you would go and have a drink. Like you have to stop and go and have a drink. Like a cigarette, like I would wake up in the morning. I would like take, like, it was great for like taking breaks. You know,
Yes.
like my neurology is like firing right now. Like my thinking about all the wonderful times I would smoke a cigarette. But there's so much cigarette smoking that like weaning, like you don't really wean. At least I didn't anyway.
No.
I had to go cold turkey. I had to find replacements, but my replacement was like orange juice. And then I realized I didn't like, I liked the breaks. I didn't like the cigarette.
Yes, 100%. Well, yeah, I mean, I think it just speaks to the addictive personality, the all or nothing kind of mentality. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, if I'm going to be a smoker, I'm going to be a smoker. And like, I'm going to be the guy who brings a pack and gives people cigarettes and like, whatever, I'll just wrap it into my identity. It's either on or off. When I quit, I didn't switch to anything. I didn't switch to anything. I know that I used an app, an application that helped support you throughout the process and actually got you connected with like other people who are quitting as well. So you were actually paired with like a group of people who quit on the same day or week as you. And one of the challenges was to connect with one of those people like every day as just kind of like to get you through those first few days.
Well, it's like a branch of the step, like the step
yeah.
system in AA and NA and stuff. It's like having that sponsor, having accountability. That's huge. I mean, community people love doing something for others. I think is one of the most powerful mechanisms for change. So how did you quit? What was the motivation for you?
Well, I had tried so many times. I really hated it. My mom was a smoker, and it was such a problem in our household. My other siblings were so like vehemently against my mom smoking, you know, try to use every emotional coercion under the books to get her to quit, you know, like with grandkids or, you know, just for your own health, mom, like stop doing this. And it was just this lifelong journey of my mom, like saying she would quit and then lying and then hiding. And I just knew, objectively speaking, I didn't like it. I didn't like that's where my money was going. For sure, there were certain things that I do miss about it. Kind of just speaking to what you're saying, the breaks actually, and this is another thing that I didn't appreciate until after I had quit is I used to do a lot more homeless ministry, and when I was smoking cigarettes, it was awesome. You know, like I used to work in Boston, and if I was just smoking a cigarette and there was a homeless guy right there, I'd be like, "Hey, do you want one?" And then all of a sudden, we're actually having a conversation. It's an authentic conversation. Now there's just like, it's so awkward and obvious if you're stopping to talk to someone who's homeless on the street. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but it was a bit more casual. No, the reason I needed to quit is I knew that it was a carcinogen. I didn't want to actually die that way. And I was also broke in grad school. So I wanted my money to go somewhere else.
I will say that's true. I mean, not just with, I mean, I didn't have the same homeless person experience as you, but the socialization of it. I mean, I worked in a lot of restaurants. I mean, there was that 5-minute break allowed you to bond with someone who you could at least bond with over the fact that you're smoking.
Yes.
Right. So like you're both just stressed and now you're coming down together by having the cigarette, and then it creates a lot of conversation.
For me, you're both unconsciously consenting to the fact that we're doing something we know isn't healthy, but like we'll do it together. So we're kind of creating a bond and mischievy.
Right. You're not going to judge me for smoking.
Exactly.
So that's good, because people do judge you. People do judge you. And I quit because I like couldn't make it up a flight of stairs, and I was in my 20s. It was like, what is wrong with me? The money, it stunk. And then when I learned that like there's rat poisoning in cigarette filters. Was it cyanide? I was like, oh, that's disgusting.
Especially the menthols.
I know menthols. They like shred up your lungs, don't they? There's like
glass. It's like a fiberglass.
Fiberglass.
Yeah.
All right. This isn't the most exciting of topics. So let's move on to something a bit more positive. Satanism.
Satan. Great.
Okay.
Great.
You know, I was coming up with text that I wanted to read here. And I know it's not interesting to have me read text for people, but there was so much here I wanted to read. So I'm going to try and be good about summarizing as best I can. So this is comes from the Catholic News Agency. So Claudia Caneva, an Italian professor at Roma Tre University, gave a presentation recently on music and Satanism in the course of exorcism and deliverance prayer that was held in the Italian capital. Okay. So she argues that it is rock music. So there's a relationship between music and philosophy, and asserted that rock music especially is harmful, can physiologically alter adolescence. Demonic influence through music, a choice vehicle of dissemination. So it's a choice vehicle of dissemination. What does that mean? That means the devil uses music purposely as ways to disseminate his message to the world, his anti-God message to the world. It's a phenomenon in which we need to be very attentive. The professor also stated that heavy metal, which has very piercing sound that envelops young people, is a topic that's become of great interest. Some other points here. Young people are very sensitive to neuroendocrine dynamics, and especially adolescents, where they experience a hormonal explosion loaded with aggressiveness and emotional affectivity. She also cited musical subgenre of trap. Do you know what trap is? It's a brand of rap in the South, but it's and it like it's heavily involved with like drug trade, right? Like the content's all about drug trade. And we know.
I thought it was like a trance, like EDM, like ecstasy type thing. Oh, okay.
No. It's a subgenre of rap. And we know that in the world of drug use, there are a lot of like satanic rituals and blessings, not the word, but curses on drugs that are shipped before they're shipped to get people addicted. Okay. Negative emotions is associated with, so Caneva also said the musical subgenre of trap and other sectors of the industry, such as video games, television series, which leads to negative emotions, aggressiveness, and restlessness. So, I mean, this goes on, and it talks about how it's designed to get children to be apathetic to reality, not necessarily to make them angry, but to be apathetic, to not care, and to be cold. She said it's of no use to try and prohibit or ban these things, but the idea is that parents need to be super, super involved. Going back to our earlier point, parents need to be very involved in and conversate with their children regarding what they take in. And it's not that you will necessarily, like, you're not going to be just by listening to this music, it's not as if you'll necessarily be possessed or something like that. But she said a lot of possessions demonstrate that some of the entryways into that soul included real deep engagement with hard rock and hard music and satanic activity. So what do you think about this? What are your thoughts about Satanism and music and the dangers, especially for adolescents and young people? As a parent, I mean, your oldest is how old now? 10. So you're right on the cusp of probably an explosion of interest in music.
Yes, his hair will start getting longer. His shirts will become blacker.
Well,
hopefully not.
Enjoy that. Enjoy the hair getting longer while you can, kid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's so much to be said about the subject. I really appreciate how the article weaved in and out of like the physiological responses and the spiritual consequences. I mean, that's such an integrated, concept of like, it's not like heavy metal is just evil because it's going to affect your soul in some like abstract, spiritual way. Like it's actually changing your brain physiology to be more aggressive, to demand higher stimulation in order to, feel calm. There's just such a high correlation of like risk-taking behavior when you're also, I mean, like these heavy metal concerts. Have you ever heard of oh gosh, what did they call them? It was like they were like it was like breakdancing or something like that, where they would someone in the crowd would just start punching people around them, and there'd just be this mob, like brutal fight.
Which is like you talking about like a mosh pit, or it's like an actual fight?
That's the word. Yeah. They would just do these crazy things, and who knows? Like, I mean, if that's kind of like your baseline, where like you're about to just throw blows and like seriously hurt people that nothing about all around you, it's pretty intense. I mean, I don't even know where to begin, other than like, you can see how it does that to adults. Who knows what it's starting to do as a foundation to teenagers who are listening to it
Ben Solo says it's called slam dancing. I think that is different than a mosh pit. I mean, mosh pits have been around for a long time. That's where mosh pit is when you jump in and you just kind of like bump into other people. Like,
well, yeah, you're doing it.
Not that it's not dangerous, but it's not the same as like literally fighting as the music is being played.
Yeah, people are like throwing blows. Yeah, it's craziness.
Yeah. Here's another thing. I was one of the things I wanted to read, but I didn't get a chance to. So Caneva made reference to the phenomenon called mirror neurons. We know what those are. Those are really important for infant development, as mirror neurons are those neurons that are firing in the brain of the child in response to the parent's affect. And so the child is like learning how to relate emotionally to another person in those early stages, but we all have mirror neurons. So it's those neurons that only fire in response to other faces and other experiences with other people. So a relevant discovery of neuroscience used in the educational field that explains how neurons have a similar behavior to that of a mirror. It mirrors mirror neurons. This dynamic shows that the action we observe in another individual is reflected in our brain, making neurons play a decisive role in our behaviors. Consequently, she warns that music is not just music. Music is a show. It's a performance, and young people are victims of those who produce it. So this is when it starts to get kind of weird. I don't want to betray the field of psychology here for those people who may take a Rorschach test eventually, or do some kind of psychological testing, but I don't think I am if I explain it a certain way. So, the Rorschach test, which is the ink blot test. You know what those ink blots are, right?
They're literally just random.
They're just ink blots.
Yeah.
They're just ink blots. But people see different things in the ink blot.
Right.
And that's normed against the whole population in terms of the type of things that people see. But there's other kinds of assessment tools where someone is told to draw certain things or describe what they see in the picture. And this is an important psychological principle because art has a way of getting underneath your consciousness, your executive functioning, and it gets down into the unconscious and like grabs what's down there and pulls it out. Right. So it's different than if you're giving someone an assessment tool that's like true or false, right? Person can control whether they're saying true or false. They can kind of manipulate it. But what's called projective testing is it allows for like the administrator of the test to see what's going on at a subconscious level outside of the control of the examinee. Now you can still, there's ways to still fudge it. I mean, nowadays you can go online and read what you're supposed to say on the cards. Don't ever do that if you take a Rorschach test. But the point though, the principle is this is what art can do. I mean, it's why we're moved a certain way when we look at a painting or, I don't cry that often. When I do, it's most often when I'm watching a movie and like, there's this dynamic that occurs in movies over and over again, where like at the bleakest moment, like some kind of like good thing comes and rescues everything. It's like really like ultimately my longing for Christ. But but I like, when Gandalf shows up at Helm's Deep, I like start to tear up. I start to choke up because like, that's this unconscious desire that I have, like to be rescued when things are difficult or to be saved. Right. Musically, we all know that we're in a mood for certain songs and not in the mood for other songs. So like, there's this counterpoint in our unconscious with what's outside of us as is what's expressed in the art. The dangerous thing here, and like, this is obviously subject to criticism, but I mean, it's an interesting thought, is that if that's true, which that all of that is true, if I find a way of identifying with an other through the art in my unconscious, and demons and Satan know this, it's like, it's their way of getting inside into my unconscious and poking around a little bit. Like, yes. So if I'm angry, if I'm in a bad mood, certain music that's angry, and there's nothing wrong with being angry, but certain music that has an angry kind of flavor to it, a certain rhythmic quality to it, and volume and cadence, like is going to resonate with me. Right now, if that music is colored by satanic activity, it's doing something with my anger. Yes. It's not just at validating that I should be angry, justified anger at an injustice. It's like, now it's twisting things a bit. Now it's telling me, maybe it's leading me towards the vice of wrath. Maybe it's telling me to hurt other people with my anger.
Precisely. Yes.
That's what's so upsetting.
Yeah. I mean, talk about, it just makes anger more extreme. So now anger, at least in a healthy way, starts to become less and less relevant to, and it stigmatizes anger too. So like, if if all you know about anger is that it leads to violence and hatred of God and trying to
Right.
punish God or like mock him, then of course like you're going to try to not be angry if that's the correlation that you have with it. And so yeah, it's a twisting of like a natural emotion into something that's just purely evil, and it doesn't have to be, just doesn't have to be that angry.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, but this heavy metal stuff, it's more than just anger. It is. I mean, they're saying some evil stuff in those songs, man.
I almost, I think for the spiritually sensitive out there, if you're trying to live your life of faith and you're in tune to spiritual things, it's not that this can be replicated in a lab. This isn't hard, empirical, positivistic science, but I can feel it. Can you feel it? Like whether it's a television show or it's a song or something, you can kind of feel the darkness that's present there.
Yeah.
If you have kind of like, I don't want to say eyes to see, but like the spiritual attunement to feel it. And
Yeah.
we really gotta protect our youth.
Yeah, we really do. Yeah. And yep, I think if you're paying attention, and your kids aren't just allowed to do whatever they want, whenever they want, and it's a pretty simple conversation. I think
Yeah.
it's not that far of a leap to tell a kid like, this sounds like some pretty aggressive music. Maybe we could listen to something a little bit better or whatever.
For sure. All right, let's go to some comments here.
I was going to say,
Oh,
Ben Solo asked a question.
Okay. Yeah, we'll start with Ben. So Ben says, if music is physical in terms of the vibrational waves that move, then how would purely spiritual entities like demon work in the music itself? Well, okay. So demonology is its own topic in terms of how demons can influence us. I am not an expert in this. Although on the Catholic Show, I did interview an expert in this, Dave Van Vickle, and he talks about how, demons, they're like basically like the greatest neuroscientists in the world. They like anything that we can attain in terms of intelligence. They are pure intelligence. They're so much brighter than us. So they can use the natural order and the material universe to influence us, and they can even influence our neurology, like our brain patterns. So, I don't want to misrepresent this too, because this gets like, I don't want, especially those people who are spiritually sensitive to scrupulosity and have anxiety around spiritual issues. But they can influence our thought patterns. They can influence our memories. They can influence our creative processes. So they can influence our receptivity. They can influence that. Now, important part of my interview with Dave Van Vickle is that, all you need to do is stay close to the Blessed Mother. Like the Blessed Mother, when a priest walks in for an exorcism, like that demon knows it's about to get body slammed. Like demons hold nothing against Christ or the Blessed Mother. Like they hate the Blessed Mother because they don't understand her, because they only understand sin. That's the only thing they understand. And since Mary was without sin, she confuses demons. So they're absolutely terrified of her. So we don't need to live in fear of demons. That's kind of like, we want to tie the loop in here. This is can be a scary topic for people.
Yeah, for sure.
There's actually nothing to be worried about. Like, say your prayers, take your vitamins.
Yeah, I was just going to add, like, I think when we're talking about the physiological changes that it has on a brain, I think it's fair to say that it's when it's chronically exposed, that's when you're going to see the biggest impact to someone's psychology. So, like, if a middle schooler is only listening to heavy metal, then you're going to see a chronic experience on that kid's physiology, and like he's going to have all these schemas around anger. If you're just like walking past the store and they happen to be playing heavy metal,
right?
That's not what I think this article is referring to. So
no, it's engaging with it, and it's identifying with the emotion that a particular genre of music or song introduces to your psyche. And so, Ben's question though is like, can purely spiritual entities affect the material world and physical world? The answer is yes, they can.
They can manipulate it. Yeah.
Go back to the article. Go back to the article with, or the episode with Dr. Greg. It was 2 episodes ago. We were talking about aliens. Dr. Greg's of the firm belief that there's no such thing as aliens, and everything we see is actual demons that are affecting the material world. They can create illusions. They can they can
That's the
affect
key
the
word is
material.
illusions, though. That's my understanding, is that it's all illusions. Like, they can't actually make physical matter. They can just make us think that what we're seeing is physical matter.
They can't create physical matter like only God creates out of nothing, ex nihilo, but they can manipulate and rearrange physical matter such
Right.
that it affects
So that
us.
phenomenologically, what we think we're experiencing feels as real as it can get. So
I mean, Satan used to show up with Padre Pio and just beat him up.
that's
You know,
true.
like it was physical. It's not as if because they're spiritual entities that they don't have. God allows them the power to enter into the physical material universe. He allows that. Why does he allow it? I mean, to humiliate them. He allows it. He allows them to humiliate them.
Yeah.
He allows it to build up the kingdom of God, to utilize their oppression or their possession or their attacks for his greater glory. Because, you know, the moment you pit a demon against God, it's an unfair fight.
Yeah,
It's
talk
like,
about a brilliant jujitsu move, just using your opponent's energy against
Right.
them.
Right. And this is what God does. He takes evil and suffering and he draws good from it. So, like, we actually don't need to be scared of any of this, but we should be aware of the spiritual dangers, especially for adolescents, regarding music, and to, you know, not go overboard, not to worry about every little thing. But, you know, if you have a feeling, I would err on the side of caution here.
Right. And don't be afraid to educate your children. It's totally fine.
Yeah. Let's go. Some more comments here. People are talking. Hannah says, she's talking about when Dr. Greg popped his head in my camera. When your boss shows up to make sure you're working. What's he doing? He should be in Egypt. Dr. Greg says it's all for the views. Okay. Ellen Allison, I'm blessed to see the culture of foster parents and parents adopting special needs children, such a group of totally dedicated parents. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, those are people that are embracing the cross of parenting, the challenges of it. I mean, because those are a unique set of challenges with adopted children and special needs children and foster parents. But that's someone who's willing to relinquish. I mean, by and large, the idea is it's someone who's willing to relinquish whatever is holding them back selfishly, spiritually, psychologically, to give of themselves. And it's also, I mean, oftentimes you have people who adopt or become foster parents or because they're moved because maybe they have difficulty conceiving themselves. So they really experience the pain of the absence of parenting.
Right.
So when they come to the actual process of parenting and taking in those children with needs, I mean, they're amazing parents. They're super parents. It's really impressive what they're willing to endure out of love.
Beautiful witness. Absolutely.
We have a couple more comments here. Now we're going to go over to Instagram. Audrey says, when we were talking about the bowling kids party, and I was describing all the parents just socializing with each other and the kids being ignored, she says, sounds like parenting in the 70s and 80s, kind of. It's true. Parenting has shifted. Okay, Sunshine had some comments here. Oh, this is a good one. We're talking about the nicotine and the e-cigarette. Bob says, I find nicotine incredibly helpful with ADHD. Instead of taking afternoon doses of medicine, nicotine helps a ton for focus to get tasks done. Yeah, with people with that particular neurology, stimulants help. It's like my wife has ADHD, and like coffee doesn't affect her the same way. I mean, it stabilizes her, it calms her, and that's part of that neurology. Now, okay, he's saying that he chooses that in favor of taking medicine. I mean, that's a personal choice. talk to your psychiatrist.
I don't know enough about it, but I do know that like people in the military and like people who are high up in like athletics will use something like a nicotine patch to keep them stimulated and keep them focused during very particular times. And so, but a nicotine patch is a whole lot, or like nicotine gum is a whole lot different than buying a pack of cigarettes and feeling stuck in that kind of regard.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's a trade-off, right? I mean, I'm not a medical doctor. I don't know what having 1 or 2 cigarettes a day will do for people. You know, it's a trade-off. But I don't know the damaging effects. I think it's also unique to the person too. Everyone has different physiology. You do hear of people that smoke until they're 90 years old.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and all the college friends that I would like smoke a cigarette with, most of them could just have 1 or 2 and never think about it again. I just didn't have that kind of chemistry. As soon as I was smoking cigarettes, I needed to have more.
No, yeah. Sunshine says, I wish my kid would vape versus Canada celebrated cannabis. Ugh. Yeah, I mean, cannabis is a whole nother topic for another time. I mean, there is a world in which cannabis can be used therapeutically in a proper therapeutic context. Recreational marijuana has its issues. I don't think we need to really get into that today, but
I mean, that's a whole lot.
we'll pray for your kid. He said his kid is in his 30s. He also says death metal is pretty subversive. Yep. Okay. Lots of people saying hi. If someone is feeling bullied at school, then listens to death metal, that can be a bad combo. Yeah, I mean, if they're feeling angry at the injustice of being bullied, and then the response of the death metal is hurt someone else, that's what we were saying before about the access being allowed and doing something with the anger. So we have a question here. I have a question. I found a Catholic heavy metal band talking about Mary and stuff. Do you feel the same about that? Oof. It's tough. I mean, I have to really think this through. I'm going to give an answer, which is certainly like subject to being incorrect, wrong here. But
I have my initial thoughts too. Yeah.
Yeah. If we're saying that the dangerous thing about the spiritual attack is that someone can get into our emotional life, or a demon, a spiritual entity can get into our emotional life and tamper with it in a negative way, perhaps it follows then if the spiritual entity that we're allowing in are angels, or it's a devotion to Blessed Virgin Mary, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe it's actually a good thing, where we can take our anger and focus it towards that which is good, towards righteous causes. Any thoughts?
That's fair. It's fair. I could see it going either way. I mean, I never got into any of the Christian heavy metal stuff. I just couldn't find the appeal to it. But I do have a friend who does, and who does enjoy listening to it, and I remember him having his headphones in during a car trip and just jamming out, and
listening to holy things through
listening to holy
rock.
things. It's all right. He seems like a pretty collected person. The only thing I could think of is, as what you were just saying, of the physiological response to that kind of just aggressive, high stimulation kind of music. It could just reinforce this feeling like you just need to keep getting more and more. And I just think to kind of avoid it if we can.
I think too, anger is one of those emotions where the longer you sit in it, the more prone you are to ruminations. I know that if I'm angry and I sit with my anger and I don't express it, the thoughts become darker over time.
Sure.
I think anger is kind of a slippery slope in that way. So if you're, I don't know. I don't know.
If it floats your boat and it's not affecting you significantly, then I guess keep at it. But
yeah. So we were talking about addiction, and we slid the e-cigarette combo in early. We probably should have given more time to this next topic. People love when we talk politics. We should at least mention, we've got about roughly 10 minutes left today. We should at least mention former President Donald J. Trump is talking about how he wants to close the Department of Education should he be reelected. And push the long-held Republican goal to have education shipped back to the states rather than be controlled at a federal level. Now, critics of this are saying that this doesn't really give more power to the states. The Board of Education doesn't have that level of control. It has the power to set curriculums. It does not. Okay, hold on. Let me read the sentence just so I have it accurate. Eliminating the U.S. Department of Education would not necessarily give any more power to states over K through 12 schools. While the federal agency helps the president execute education policies, the power to set curriculum, establish schools, and determine enrollment eligibility already lies within the states and local school boards. So it won't change. It seems like it's not going to change much. But right. it's a political move.
Exactly, except to get support from people who think that the education system isn't going the right direction.
Right. So this is, education is really, really important topic on people's minds right now. And if they dig into this a little bit, it doesn't mean anything. But for those people who are very concerned about what is taught in school, whether they don't want their children to be exposed to questions regarding sexuality or gender identity, or at a point where their minds are still being formed and are extremely impressionable, and they're setting up it just feels inappropriate in terms of what's being forced on children. When they hear something like this, they're excited and they'll throw support in favor of Trump.
Right.
Any initial thoughts here?
No, I mean, other than, my wife's a school teacher. She works in a public school, and
Yeah.
my understanding is that like the culture of what's educated, or like what has to be on the curriculum, does come from the state. It comes from, so like a public school in Massachusetts is going to look different than a public school in Ohio or in Texas, because there's these state regulations that get passed down. So she said, like, there's the only thing that she could remember or could think of is actually coming down from the federal government is that we have to do standardized testing. Like, that's across the country, is you have to do standardized testing. But even then, like, what you test on is up to the state. So, yeah, I mean, I just agree with you. I think it's a political move. I think it's a smart one. I think it would get a lot of people who aren't going to dive into the actual facts of it. It's going to get them.
I mean, there's a lot of rhetoric you could put around a decision like this.
Yeah, and that's not to say that like a big stroke like this doesn't have an effect on the culture, right? So like the whole immigration thing, like who knows how much the wall actually decreased. Did they even finish that project? Because this was his last president campaign.
Yeah, but it got fired up for people to support him regardless of the actual impact.
Exactly. So it's going to
depending on their.
It gets people more ingrained into like their side of the aisle. Like, am I really going to put my money where my mouth is when it comes to immigration policy, or am I really going to put my money where my mouth is with education?
It's interesting. I think there was a world around these kind of these quote unquote moral issues, where formerly it was. I know people who still like maintain this position that it's like, okay, you can just go live your life however you want as long as it doesn't affect me, right? Like if someone from a Catholic perspective or a conservative perspective, there's lots of people that can maintain a conservative perspective and just say like, hey, like live and let live. Go ahead and do what you want to do. Okay. And I think what has occurred with a liberal surge of support around ideas of like tolerance and inclusion for these types of issues, it hasn't ended at that. It's become, let's influence the youth regarding these ideas.
Yes.
And I mean, where you have like transgender, like storybook time, and like conservatives have a visceral response to like, like transgender people like swinging on a pole doing like sexual dances wearing risque clothes while little children are reading like storybooks, like that kind of thing, or like what happens in the schools. So I think like it's almost like what's the word, galvanized. It's galvanized a Republican view or a conservative viewpoint to create all this tension. Like the identity politics has become as heated a debate as it has, because it's encroached on the world of people's children. You can't just you can't say live and let live anymore. Like just go live your life. It doesn't affect me. Now it's now living your life is affecting my child. And that's why there's so much tension around this in a new way. So now
that's a hill people will die on. Yes.
Right. Yeah. People will die on that hill. So now when it becomes a political issue, Trump can use this to, just really critique liberals' viewpoints on these major issues. The other thing that comes to my mind too is, something I'm hearing from Trump a lot. It seems like lately he's been pushing take things out of federal control and put it to the state level, right? Whether it was the overturning of Roe versus Wade, and he's recently talked about abortion should be at the state level. Here's rhetoric again, things should be at the state level, and I think on and on and on. Now that's generally a Republican view, right? Small government, local government, okay. But if this kind of agenda keeps being pushed forward, I'm just thinking ahead here, where actually a lot of things that were controlled at a federal level are being pushed to a state level. you hear in the air that there's so much divide in this country between conservative and liberal viewpoints. It's almost like there are two different countries within this country. You talk about the coastal elites versus the flyby states, but generally speaking, we're such a soup of people. Like I live in Connecticut and it's blue, but there's a lot of conservative people here. So the topic of like civil war was always, to me, it was always like, how could that possibly happen? There can't be battles along state lines. But if more policies get pushed down to the state level and you get more differentiation by state, and maybe not now, but maybe in a generation or so over the next 50 years or something like that, people start moving to different states because of the change in policies, because life in those states and the culture in those states are that much different.
Yeah.
Now it creates a possibility for civil war and they're breaking up the United States, you know, like around issues like this. Now again, this doesn't matter. This particular one doesn't matter, but I see
what you mean. But like, I think if we follow that through, like, there's also going to be so many opportunities for course correction. You know, like if it really seems like people are moving to other states because like that's where, you know, their views are going to be validated more. Like, I don't know, there's going to be plenty of policies that can be put in place to try to decrease that kind of thing. And like, there's going to be a homeostasis that the country could go through to try to combat it. So I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, even on the liberal side, they do not want to live in states where they can't have an abortion. I mean, they're driving 3-4 states to have an abortion sometimes.
They are,
you know. So there's the cultural divide, I think, is increasing, and if more power over policy is being pushed to the state level, I think we're going to see more differentiation between the cultures and regionally differentiated. So that will be interesting.
It will be.
Yeah. All right, last topic. We got a couple minutes left here. Let's just talk about the heat. We'll talk about the heat wave. I mean, there's not that much to say about it besides it's terrible.
Well,
in the Northeast,
down for me now.
Yeah, it's supposed to cool down in the Northeast over the next couple of days, but we had the heat dome. We have all these floods in Iowa. So people are yelling climate change right now. You had what else did we have? We had in the annual trip to Mecca. Where is this here? More than 1,000 people dead during Hajj, the annual Muslim pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca. Officials blame extreme heat with temperatures reaching 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So the heat is a thing. People are dealing with it. Well, what can we say about it? We're not climatologists here. We can't say much about the climate, but we can talk about it from a mental health perspective. So there was an article that came out here that talked about the impact on mental health. So as U.S. swelters under unrelenting heat wave, experts say, I don't know who these experts are, that the sky-high temperatures can make people feel more frustrated, stressed, and exacerbate existing mental health conditions. You know, it's true. It's true. I'm ornery when I'm hot. This week brought dangerous levels of heat to cities in the east as heat advisories, watches, or warnings were issued for more than 100 million people. You might think that warm weather improves your mood. You know, summertime, heat, getting outside. But extreme heat can have the opposite effect, including disruption to sleep, hormone changes that can reduce alertness and cognition. The heat also makes it harder for people to connect with their communities or even take a stroll outside, which many use to alleviate stress. I mean, the first thought that comes to my mind, like, welcome to wintertime. Like, you know, but experts say just having awareness of heat's impact on moods can help us pinpoint feeling depressed, anxious, or irritable amid extreme heat, and drinking water regularly and staying in cool areas. So the heat, are you stressed? Are you more anxious? Is your sleep?
I've noticed that definitely. There's definitely more of an inclination towards being stressed. I've seen it even with my 2.5-year-old and 1-year-old. I think when like even when you pick up your kid and like you're sticking together and there's not really like a comfortable place to like hold the kid because you're like both kind of sweaty and clammy because it's just hot and uncomfortable. Sure, that's going to lead to some irritability and just like wishing you could just feel comfortable in the room that you're sitting in. And if that's what you're supposed to. And of course, it's going to affect your sleep. You know, whenever you go through any big change, it's going to affect your sleep, which is going to affect your mood. You know, what just gets me, though, is that it doesn't make a justification for being like a jerk, like just because it's a hot day. You know, like it's good to
Yeah.
recognize, like, yeah, like, of course, I'm irritable. Everyone's irritable because we're all experiencing the same thing. I need to be more mindfully aware of that and not let
Yeah.
that be the reason why I'm going to be, snappy with my wife or short tempered with my kids. Like, I have to increase my compassion, to walk with everyone.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, have you seen it as a parent too?
Yeah, I do feel a little bit trapped like you do in the wintertime. I think in the Northeast, we're willing to endure the winter months of being stuck inside, um, because the summer is coming. And I think the association with heat reducing stress is because we can go to the beach, we can go to the pool, we're willing to accept the heat as it is, and we have access, like the summer vacation mentality, we have access to the pool or the ocean or things that can cool us down. We're not just in the heat indefinitely. That's
Right.
different than day-to-day functioning when you're just like going to work and you show up like, I mean, I remember in DC when I used to dress up for work and stuff in the heat down there, and I'd show up like caked in sweat. Like that was
Right.
disgusting.
Already
Like you
you're
don't,
back, yeah.
yeah, you don't feel good. Like if you have to drive, and I really want those air conditioned seats. By the way, in a car, I've had the heated seats before, but I haven't had air conditioned seats. Those sound awesome. But you get in your car and that's gross. That makes you irritable. You don't feel good as you're starting your day. I work from home, but I know that feeling. To your point though, yeah, I think we often make the mistake of describing our mood as affected by external circumstances as me not being myself. In other words, like, oh, I'm sorry I snapped at you. I'm hungry. Sorry I've been short tempered. I've been irritable. Like it's just really hot outside, and I haven't been able to get outside. Which is a fair argument. Like getting outside, connecting with people, doing community activities. Those are really important for our mental health, and the heat does prevent you from doing that. But to your larger point, it's not that we are not ourselves in those moments. We are a part of ourselves that probably needs to change. Like in the face of sufferings, how do we relate to our sufferings? How do we relate to other people when we're in a difficult place, when we're experiencing difficulty? It's actually a tremendous opportunity to grow psychologically and spiritually, to mature, endure suffering, and still act in love in relation to other people.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, just empathize. Like, are you able to step outside of your own discomfort to see the discomfort of someone else? And then are
Yeah.
you willing to do something about that?
Yeah.
When you're so blended with a part of you that you can't see past your own discomfort, then yeah, of course it's
Right.
going to even further exacerbate the issues. But
Yeah. Some of it is we live such comfortable lives now that when discomfort is forced upon us, it's so anomalous that we don't know how to handle it. Versus
yeah,
other people in other times in history and other contexts, they're a lot tougher than us because that was the context in which they lived. And
yes,
so they learned how to be good there. Yeah.
yeah. I know we're running out of time here, but I did listen to something. I heard something from another podcast, Center of the World, Andrew Huberman and Dave Goggins, those kind of people,
Yeah.
and they were talking about how we need to purposely expose ourselves to things that we don't like, and like
Yes.
try to do those things. So like think about like the cold shower, like turning
Mm.
on that ice cold shower. Like you hate it and it doesn't feel good. Some people say it feels good, so this wouldn't apply to those people. But for the normal person like myself who hates it, actually like choosing to do it, exposing yourself to something you don't like, increases your willpower to face the uncomfortable things that
Yes.
you don't have control over. If you
Right.
can purposely put yourself in a situation that you're uncomfortable, the more likely you're going to be able to stay, be more like yourself when
Yeah.
uncomfortable situations come, such as like a heat
Be- because the cross is coming no matter what, right?
wave.
It's in a certain, we're going to get off, far afield here pretty quickly here, but when you hear about people who suffer early in life, they have childhood trauma. It's obviously terrible. We don't want children to suffer. We don't want any suffering, right? But what can happen though is when people experience suffering and trauma at a young age, they mature more quickly, and if they get through it and then it doesn't lead them to despair, if God is involved in their circumstances, then it leads to wisdom and they have a maturity, right? And so as life goes on and difficult things come, they're able to handle it. When you compare that to people who've lived more of a charmed life
Yes.
and they have to deal with suffering later on, they're oftentimes not prepared for it, and they can't handle the immensity of tragedy and loss, as life goes on. So Not that I'm saying, hey, it's good that we suffer early, but it's just an observation about putting ourselves in uncomfortable positions, learning how to deal with suffering, because sooner or later suffering's coming our way and it's going to be out of our control. So it behooves us from a psychological and a spiritual perspective to be able to embrace the cross.
Amen. True that.
All right, let's cut it. Dr. Greg slapped me on the wrist for going 5 minutes over here.
Sounds
Ryan, thanks for coming on. It was fun.
Thanks for having me.